Are you bored of your war game? Are you sick and tired of the same old, same old? Are you burned out with today's FOMO and rush of products? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we need to turn to the good book, the latest book, the bestest book. I was in hobby burnout. No urge to paint, no excitement to build a new army. Games felt a bit hollow and rehearsed. Then I came across Warcrow. At first, I thought it was another generic fantasy game, but then I looked deeper and I found something really, really cool. Warcrow is a fantasy skirmish game from Corvus Belli. As a player, you pilot one of 6 factions, leading units and characters against a rival. You build lists, deploy forces, then fight using dice and smart choices, just like any other game. You collect beautiful miniatures, assemble and paint them, just like any other game. And the setting includes humans, elves, dwarfs, orcs and more, just like any other game. But Warcrow is different. The models are gorgeous, detailed, dynamic and full of character. Every single sculpt is impressive, and even though some of the designs cling close to fantasy tropes, there is a definite distinctive look that separates these minis from others in the industry. They're also a dream to paint. They have enough detail that contrast or speed paints work really well on them, or you can spend a bit more time to really make them pop on the table. I've personally spent the last 6 months practicing non-metallic metals on my army, and I'm very pleased with the result. It's not all positive. Every game has its pros and cons. One of the biggest cons of Warcrow is that most of the early releases are made of a material called Cyocast. It's a thermoplastic that produces very light and detailed miniatures, but it has a bad reputation for producing poor moulds and being terrible to work with. You can't sand it and you can't scrape it. The only thing you can do is use a razor-sharp blade to carefully slice away anything that shouldn't be there. This is fine for straight parts like weapon shafts and legs, but far more difficult and destructive across an emblem or a face. However, recent releases have been produced in a material called Unicool. This is a resin material known for its crisp detail and ease of use. It's a fantastic material and more than makes up for the earlier use of Cyocast, and most of the new and modern releases for Warcrow are being produced in this material, Unicool. Issues aside, the models are amazing, and the small model count of armies makes it easy to put together something for a game. Each faction has an incredibly unique identity that's immediately visible on the table, from the Black Legion armour of the hegemony of Embasig to the flesh-crafted horrors of the Scions of Yaldabaoth. Every army looks absolutely striking on the battlefield. Let's consider the setting for a moment. Yes, there are elves, dwarves and orcs, but the tropes end quickly. The orcs have allied with a race called the Varank, who are ferocious, blue-skinned tundra warriors who can shift into animal forms. The elves bond with the sacred sienna trees. The dwarves wear powered armour, and the hegemony of Embasig fields armoured robots known as warrigs. Warcrow has a rabbit hole of hidden information that slowly unfolds as you read the core book. It expands further with the narrative events of the starter packs and the upcoming narrative campaign packs. Being a Corvus Belli product, the lore will continue to grow and adapt, making it feel like a lived-in setting. If the models and the lore seek to create an engaging setting, the system itself is what brings it to life. I'm not going to go into detail about every single mechanic that sets Warcrow apart, but I do want to cover 3 exciting systems that really make it distinct from other games. The game uses proprietary 8-sided dice with symbols instead of numbers. When you make an attack, you gather the coloured dice as listed on your stat card and roll them versus the opponent's defence dice as listed on theirs. Successes are blocked by shields, but any leftover inflict damage on the enemy. Simple. But what makes things more interesting is the use of switches. Switches are represented by exclamation marks or hollow versions of the success, shield or switch symbols. You can spend these symbols for any additional effect listed on your unit's stat card, making fights less about who damages who and more about positioning, weakening the enemy or trapping them in place. This is one of the ways that the game makes units feel incredibly unique, giving them switches and abilities that match their playstyle. Elves, for example, have a lot of switches that allow them to reposition, while the orcs have lots that allow them to deal additional damage, even in defense. When building your armies, you can choose to embed characters in units. This is done in other games, but in Warcrow the characters make a big difference. Not only do they change the face-to-face dice pools, but they also sometimes bring additional switches and abilities that can be used by the entire unit. The choice of character in a unit can radically transform what they're able to do. A war surgeon in an embassy unit brings healing and innate toughness, while a dark master in a unit of orc hunters turns them into scouts who can hide on the battlefield and assassinate key targets. This makes list building infinitely fun, as you can tinker not just with what goes into your army, but how it all works together. This also gives most characters two distinct character cards, one that works when joined to a unit, and one that works when they take to the field on their own. Again, this forces you to consider what role that character is going to play in your force. A war surgeon is great at keeping one unit alive, but they can also provide essential assistance to multiple units when they aren't joined to one. Finally, the most interesting and critical system that differentiates Warcrow from other games is its stress system. The game uses alternate activations, with each activation tracked by a dial. Games have 3 rounds and each round has 5 activations, which means that each player gets 15 activations as standard. Units can activate once per round without any issue, but they can also activate again within the same round. Doing so gains them a point of stress. A unit can continue to activate within a round until their stress equals their morale value, at which point they cannot take any more stress and cannot activate again this round. However, models can also take stress from losing combat and certain abilities and spells. If a unit takes more stress than its morale value, it might flee from the battle. So monitoring your stress level is absolutely critical. Do you keep a unit fresh, or do you send it full steam ahead to grab momentum? Do you risk exhausting a unit to knock out an enemy? Or can you exhaust an enemy unit to lock them out of activating? It gives the game a real sense of realism, where overextending a unit can be its downfall, and keeping units fresh and in reserve can win games. These are just 3 of the greatest systems in the game that make it stand out from any other. There are extensive rules for infiltration, hidden units, magic, pushing and shoving in combat. It's a game full of interesting mechanics. The core system is quick and easy to pick up, which gives it an awful lot of width and just the right amount of depth. I've fallen in love with Warcrow. I've painted an entire army, and the moment I stopped, I immediately started another. The game is only a couple of years old, but the community and the buzz around it is already fantastic. All 6 major factions are now available, and there are more interesting releases on the horizon. The game has an incredible tournament system and several narrative campaigns, offering almost anything you could want from a miniatures wargame. As I say, I've fallen in love with it, and I can see myself enjoying it for a long time. If you want to give it a try, the Song of the Dormant is the current starter set, and I suspect that another will be announced at Gen Con later in the year. Regardless, I'll be rolling dice and counting switches for a long time to come, and I hope to see you on the shores of Lindworm too. Until next time, travellers. Thanks for watching this video. I'm going to make more videos about Warcrow, including how to play, faction videos, and maybe even some battle reports. If you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button, or come join my Patreon where I share more information and ideas. But for now, game on.